It started on what seemed like an ordinary Saturday. The sun was shining, kids were laughing, and the smell of sunscreen filled the air. I had just finished setting up my lounge chair by the community pool, ready to unwind after a long week. Little did I know this peaceful day was about to explode into one of the most absurd, infuriating, yet satisfying neighborhood battles I'd ever experienced. Karen. Yes, that Karen. She's the type of neighbor who treats the HOA rules like a weapon, brandishing them at anyone she deems unworthy. And apparently I had earned her disapproval. My only crime? Being a friendly neighbor who actually enjoyed the community pool. As I dipped my toes into the water, I noticed her glaring from the other side of the pool fence. There was something off about her usual passive-aggressive smile. It had morphed into a calculated fury. I tried to brush it off, telling myself, it's probably nothing. But then, like a scene straight out of a bad sitcom, she marched right up to the HOA office with a clipboard and a scowl that could curdle milk. Minutes later she returned, mission accomplished. Or so she thought. She came storming over, raising her voice just enough to make heads turn. "You're not allowed in the pool today," she announced, as if she had single-handedly rewritten the HOA bylaws. Shocked, I asked her what she meant. She cited some obscure clause about pool usage that apparently made my presence unauthorized. I laughed, politely at first, but the more she rambled about community, safety, and personal liability, the more absurd it became. I wasn't just a pool goer. Apparently, I was a threat to the entire neighborhood. And yet, somewhere deep down, I sensed this wasn't going to end with me quietly leaving the water. Something about her self-righteous stance screamed that karma might just have a way of making things interesting. So, I did what any rational person in this situation would do. I started gathering evidence. Photos, witness accounts, and yes, even a video of her making that ridiculous proclamation. I knew that if she thought she could bully the pool into submission, she hadn't met her match. What she didn't know was that the HOA had been quietly keeping an eye on her behavior for months. Complaints, violations, and overreaches were stacking up behind the scenes. And in a twist that would soon leave the entire neighborhood talking. The tables were about to turn, but this was just the beginning. Before Karen realized it, the very rules she wielded as a weapon were about to become the chains that trapped her. The next morning, I arrived at the pool to find Karen already there, clipboard in hand, pacing like a general preparing for battle. Her eyes locked onto me as if I had personally waged war against her entire existence. I couldn't help but notice how over the top her performance was. She even waved the clipboard dramatically for emphasis, as if that alone could summon the HOA gods to her side. I tried to ignore her and focus on enjoying the pool, but that was impossible. Karen had made it her mission to turn a simple weekend swim into a full-blown courtroom. Drama. Every splash I made seemed to annoy her. Every laugh too loud, every step a personal affront. It was exhausting just watching her move. Then came the first crack in her armor. A neighbor approached her cautiously, clipboard forgotten in hand. "Karen, I'm not sure you're allowed to enforce this rule on your own," they said, keeping their voice low. Karen's face twisted, and for a moment, she looked like someone had asked her to dismantle her own life. I barely contained my grin. What she didn't know was that her ban had triggered an official HOA review. You see, she had a long history of overstepping boundaries, unauthorized complaints, finicky enforcement of rules, and a few questionable fines she'd tried to impose on neighbors. Every time she thought she was protecting the community, she was really painting herself into a corner. The HOA office called a meeting that afternoon, citing multiple violations by Karen. She arrived, still confident she could argue her way out. But it quickly became apparent that the narrative had shifted. This wasn't about me anymore. It was about her accountability. Suddenly, all the time she'd pointed fingers at neighbors. All the petty fines, and all the "I know the rules better than anyone" speeches were staring her back in the face. By mid-afternoon, the HOA chair delivered the verdict. Karen was suspended from enforcing pool rules. She was no longer authorized to monitor pool usage, issue fines, or intervene in disputes. The irony? She had literally banned me from the pool, only to find herself banned. The community watched in stunned silence as the woman, who had terrorized everyone's weekends, learned a lesson in humility. It was a satisfying reversal. I swam that evening with a smile, realizing that standing up calmly, gathering evidence, and letting the system work can be far more powerful than confrontation. Meanwhile, Karen's frustrated glare from the fence was almost comical, a cartoon villain realizing their plans had spectacularly failed. Yet despite this small victory, the story was far from over. Karen wasn't the type to accept defeat gracefully, and I knew she would be plotting her next move. The tension in the neighborhood was thick, and everyone sensed that the pool drama had only just begun. After her suspension, Karen's fury didn't simmer. It boiled over. Every morning, she appeared at the pool with a new scheme in her eyes, determined to regain control. She wasn't content with a simple ban reversal. She wanted total domination, a narrative in which she alone decided who could and couldn't enjoy the pool. It started subtly. First, she questioned the lifeguards about safety procedures. Then she claimed the pool's maintenance records were incomplete. She tried to intimidate the staff with citations and a flurry of emails. But this time, the HOA had a much closer eye on her. Every complaint was scrutinized, every claim investigated. Her usual tactics were losing their potency, and the neighbors began noticing. One afternoon, Karen tried to stage a safety inspection with a megaphone, loudly announcing that anyone in the pool was violating rules. Children scattered, and parents exchanged confused glances. I, of course, remained calmly taking notes on her overzealous behavior. Little did she know, every word she shouted was being recorded as evidence for her continued misconduct. Then came the tipping point. Karen attempted to lock the pool gate herself, claiming an emergency closure. Unfortunately for her, the HOA had already installed security cameras after a previous dispute. The footage captured her overreach in crystal clarity. As neighbors watched from outside, some laughing quietly, the HOA chair called another meeting to review the incident. Karen, realizing too late that she had no escape, tried to defend herself, but the video told a story words could not. It was stunning to witness. The woman who had once wielded rules like a weapon now found herself powerless. The HOA's decision was swift. Karen was temporarily banned from the pool entirely. No enforcement, no supervision, no intimidation, just a strict, ironclad ban from the very place she had tried to dominate. Her disbelief was almost theatrical, like a drama queen caught in her own script. Meanwhile, the neighborhood breathed a collective sigh of relief. Parents relaxed, children laughed freely, and I finally enjoyed a peaceful swim without fear of Karen's intrusion. It was more than just a personal victory. It was a small triumph of fairness and patience over self-righteousness and chaos. Yet, as Karen slunk away, muttering about unfair treatment and bias, it became clear she was far from finished plotting. The pool was safe for now, but anyone who knew her personality understood this wouldn't be the final act. Suspense lingered in the air, leaving the neighborhood buzzing with anticipation. How long could Karen's schemes stay contained? The days after Karen's suspension were surprisingly peaceful. The pool regained its sense of normalcy. Laughter returned, and for the first time in weeks, I could enjoy a quiet swim without looking over my shoulder. But Karen, true to form, was lurking in the background, plotting her next move like a storm cloud refusing to dissipate. It wasn't long before she tried to rally support from a few neighbors who had always been intimidated by her. Flyers appeared on doors, emails flooded inboxes, and she even tried to hold an unofficial meeting at the clubhouse. Her message was the same. She was the victim, the misunderstood enforcer, the guardian of pool rules. But the HOA and the majority of residents weren't buying it. In fact, the more she pushed, the more she exposed her obsession with control rather than the community's well-being. The final blow came during the HOA's monthly meeting. I attended, armed with a notebook detailing every incident, her attempts to ban me, the unauthorized pool closure, and her repeated harassment of neighbors and staff. The room was tense as the HOA chair presented the evidence, one instance after another. Every complaint she had filed against others was documented alongside her overreaches. The proof was irrefutable. Karen tried to argue, of course. She raised her voice, waved her hands, and even stomped her feet in frustration. But her theatrics fell flat against the mountain of evidence. The HOA voted unanimously. Karen was permanently banned from enforcing pool rules. Her privileges restricted until she could demonstrate accountability and compliance. Essentially, the pool she had tried to dominate was officially off limits. Not just for enforcement, but for interference entirely. As she left the room, red-faced and fuming, there was a strange mix of relief and satisfaction among the neighbors. The pool had become more than a shared space. It symbolized fairness, patience, and the triumph of reason over chaos. For me, the victory was simple yet profound. The rules that Karen tried to manipulate had ended up protecting the very community she wanted to control. The neighborhood slowly returned to its usual rhythm. Children splashed freely, friends gathered without fear of confrontation, and the pool finally became a place of enjoyment rather than tension. Even Karen's occasional appearances were met with polite but firm boundaries. Her era of self-appointed authority was over. Looking back, the story isn't just about a pool or one difficult neighbor. It's about standing your ground, documenting your experiences, and trusting that fairness and patience can prevail, Karen thought she could dictate the rules, but in the end, the system and the community worked in a way that even she couldn't manipulate. And so, the pool remained open, laughter echoing across the water. And one very notorious Karen learned the hard way. Sometimes, the rules aren't for you to bend. They're for everyone. If you enjoyed watching Karen finally get what she deserved, don't forget to hit that like button. Share your wild HOA or neighbor stories in the comments below. I'd love to hear them. And make sure to subscribe and ring the notification bell so you don't miss the next outrageous neighborhood showdown.